She was the kind of person most people barely noticed. If she walked into a room, eyes did not turn, conversations did not pause. She blended into the background the way soft rain blends into a noisy street. Not because she wanted to be invisible, but because life had taught her how easy it was for people to look past her. She worked a regular job. It's the kind that paid bills but never sparked excitement. Her days followed the same pattern. Wake up early, rush through traffic, sit through hours that felt longer than they were, then return home tired. To most people around her, this was all she was. A quiet woman with a simple life and nothing unusual about her. What they did not know was that when the day ended and the world grew quieter, another side of her came alive. Music had been part of her life for as long as she could remember. Not the polished kind people saw on screens, but the raw kind that lived inside her chest. As a child, she used to hum melodies while doing chores. She tapped rhythms on tables without thinking. When she felt overwhelmed, music became the place where her thoughts finally made sense. But life had never given her space to dream out loud. There were always more important things to worry about. Money, responsibilities, other people's expectations. So she kept her music private, like a secret she was afraid to share. She did not own expensive instruments. Most of what she used was borrowed, old, or repaired more times than she could count. Sometimes she recorded her ideas on her phone, sitting on the edge of her bed late at night. Other times, she wrote lyrics on scraps of paper and folded them into her pockets before work. She practiced quietly, always mindful of thin walls and nearby neighbors. Even then, she often stopped herself halfway through a song, worried someone might hear and laugh at work. Music was a joke. People talked about dreams all the time, but only the safe ones. Better jobs, bigger houses. Vacations they might take one day. Whenever music came up, it was usually about famous singers or viral videos. Real people, they believed, did not become musicians. Not people like her. One afternoon, during a casual conversation, someone asked what she did for fun. She hesitated, then answered honestly. She said she liked making music. The response came quickly. A surprised laugh. Someone raised their eyebrows. Another person joked that maybe she would be famous someday. The tone was light, playful, but it landed hard. She smiled and nodded, pretending she found it funny too. Inside, something small and painful tightened. After that, the jokes continued. Whenever music played in the background, someone would tease her, asking if it was her next hit song. They did not mean to be cruel. That almost made it worse. Their words were careless, not malicious. But they still told her the same thing. They did not believe her. Over time, she stopped mentioning music altogether. It was easier to stay quiet than to explain something people had already decided was impossible at home, though she never stopped. Her small room became her world. The walls held no awards, no proof of talent, only quiet determination. She spent hours listening to songs, studying how voices rose and fell, how emotions could be carried by simple sounds. She practiced again and again, fixing small mistakes no one else would ever notice. There were nights when doubt crept in, nights when she wondered if everyone else was right. Maybe it really was just a dream. Maybe she was wasting time chasing something that would never matter. But then she would play one note, or sing one line and feel it again. That deep pull in her chest, the feeling that this was what she was meant to do, even if no one else ever heard it. She was not chasing fame. She was chasing truth. Music helped her process things she never said out loud. The loneliness, the pressure, the moments she felt small in a world that moved too fast. Every song she worked on carried a piece of her story, even if no one knew it yet. Weeks turned into months. Life stayed the same on the outside, but inside, something was growing. Her confidence did not come from praise, because there was none. It came from consistency, from showing up for herself when no one else expected anything from her. Then, something unexpected happened. A notice appeared about a small local event. Nothing big. Just a community gathering where people could share talents. Singing, poetry, storytelling. Anyone could participate. She read it once and kept walking. That night, she thought about it again. Her heart beat faster just imagining standing in front of people. Her hands grew cold. Her mind filled with every possible way it could go wrong. She told herself she would not go. The next day, she passed the notice again. This time she stopped. She stood there longer than she meant to, reading the details slowly. No pressure. No judges. Just people at home. She sat on her bed and stared at the wall. She thought about all the nights she had practiced alone. All the jokes she had smiled through. All the songs that lived only in her room. A quiet question formed in her mind. What if this was the only chance she ever gave herself? She did not tell anyone she was thinking about it. Not a single person. The fear of being laughed at again was too strong. Instead, she filled out the form in silence, hands shaking as she typed. When she pressed submit, her chest felt tight. She almost regretted it instantly. In the days that followed, nothing changed on the outside. People joked. Work continued. Life moved forward. After she signed up for the event, the days began to feel heavier. Nothing around her had changed, yet everything inside her had. She still woke up early, still went to work, still smiled when required. But now, beneath all of that, there was a constant awareness. A quiet countdown she could not escape. At work, conversations felt louder than usual. Laughter echoed longer. Every casual joke seemed sharper even when it had nothing to do with her. She found herself wondering what would happen if they knew. If they found out she was going to stand on a small stage and sing in front of strangers. She imagined their reactions without trying. The raised eyebrows, the playful disbelief, the same familiar laughter. So she told no one. Evenings became more intense. Her small room no longer felt like a safe hiding place. It felt like preparation ground. She practiced more carefully now, repeating the same song until every word felt honest. She was not aiming for perfection. She was aiming for truth. Some nights her voice sounded strong. Other nights it cracked under the weight of her nerves. When that happened, she sat quietly, letting the silence settle, reminding herself why she started. Music was the only place she did not have to pretend. Memories surfaced while she practiced. Moments she had pushed away for years. Times she felt overlooked, spoken over, underestimated. She realized how much of herself she had learned to shrink just to fit, to spaces that never really welcomed her. Her songs slowly changed because of that. The words became more personal. The melody carried more feeling. It was no longer just something she enjoyed doing. It became a release. A few days before the event, doubt returned stronger than ever. She stood in front of her mirror one evening, staring at her reflection. She did not see a performer. She saw the same person everyone else saw. Quiet, ordinary, easy to ignore. She almost backed out. Her hand hovered over her phone, ready to send a message canceling her spot. She told herself it would be reasonable. No one expected her to be there anyway. No one would miss her performance. She sat on the bed for a long time, phone still in her hand. Then she remembered all the nights she had chosen to keep going when no one was watching. All the moments she had swallowed her dreams to make others comfortable. Canceling now would feel like agreeing with everyone who never believed in her. Slowly, she put the phone down. The day of the event arrived faster than she expected. She woke up with a tight feeling in her chest. Her hands shook slightly as she got ready. She chose simple clothes, nothing flashy, nothing that would draw attention before she even spoke. She wanted the music to speak for her, not her appearance. On the way there, she almost turned around twice. The venue was small, just a modest space filled with folding chairs and soft lights. People chatted easily, greeting one another like old friends. Many of them seemed confident, comfortable, already belonging. She felt out of place immediately. She checked in quietly and took a seat near the back. From there, she watched others perform. Some were good. Some were nervous. Some clearly loved being seen. The audience clapped kindly for everyone. Each performance made her heart beat faster when her turn approached. She felt lightheaded. Her name was called, and for a brief moment, she did not move. Her legs felt heavy. It's like they did not belong to her anymore. She stood anyway as she walked toward the stage. She noticed a few familiar faces in the crowd, people she knew from everyday life. People who had laughed before. Her stomach dropped. They looked surprised to see her there. A couple of them smiled, amused, whispering to each other. She could already guess what they were thinking. This is going to be interesting. She reached the center of the stage and took a breath. The microphone felt cold in her hands. The room felt too quiet, too expectant. For a second, fear threatened to take over completely. Then she closed her eyes. She thought about her room. The late nights. The songs that kept her company when nothing else did. She thought about how much it had cost her to stand there. She opened her eyes and began. The first sound was soft, almost fragile. A few people shifted in their seats, not yet paying full attention. Some glanced at their phones. Then her voice settled. It was steady, clear, filled with something that could not be practiced. The room began to change. Whispers faded. Phones lowered. Heads lifted. Her song spoke of feeling invisible, of trying to be heard in a world that did not listen. It did not accuse. It did not beg. It simply told the truth. As she sang, she forgot where she was. She forgot the crowd. She forgot the fear. She sang the way she always had when she was alone. Honest and unguarded. She noticed the shift before she finished. The stillness. The way people leaned forward without realizing it. Even those who had smiled earlier now looked serious, almost stunned. When the final note faded, the room stayed silent. Not awkward silence. Something heavier. Something full. Then applause broke out. It was not polite clapping. It was loud, genuine. Some people stood without thinking. Others wiped their eyes quickly, embarrassed by their own reaction. She stood frozen for a moment, unsure what to do. Then she nodded slightly and walked off the stage. Her legs felt weak as she returned to her seat. Her heart raced, not from fear this time, but from release. She felt exposed, but lighter than she had in years. People looked at her differently now. Some smiled softly. Others avoided her eyes, as if unsure how to respond. A few leaned over to whisper words of praise she barely heard. The people who knew her sat quietly, expressions unreadable. She did not stay long after the event ended. She slipped out while the room buzzed with conversation. The night air felt cool against her face, grounding her. On the walk home, everything felt unreal. She replayed the performance in her mind, every note, every breath. She thought about the silence after the song, the applause that followed. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe something. Maybe it had never been a joke. Maybe. She had just been singing to the wrong audience. When she reached home, she sat on her bed and let the quiet surround her. She did not feel triumphant. She felt calm. Whatever happened next. She knew one thing for sure. She had finally been heard. The next morning felt strangely quiet. Not peaceful, just different. She woke up before her alarm and lay still, staring at the ceiling. The memory of the performance returned slowly, like light entering a dark room. For a moment, she wondered if it had all been a dream. Then her phone buzzed. There were messages she had not expected. A short note from someone she barely spoke to, saying they were moved. Another from a coworker, awkwardly written, saying they did not know she could sing like that. A third from a stranger who had found her through the event page, thanking her for the song. She read each one carefully, her hands trembling slightly. The words felt unreal, like they belonged to someone else's life. She did not reply right away. She needed time to breathe. On her way to work, the city looked the same, but she did not feel the same inside it. She walked slower, noticing small details she usually ignored. The sound of traffic, the rhythm of footsteps. Music seemed to exist everywhere now. When she arrived, she felt eyes on her. Not everyone noticed. Many people were busy with their own routines, but a few looked up when she passed. Some smiled. Some stared a little too long, as if trying to connect the person they knew with the one they had seen on stage. One person stopped her near the entrance. They said her performance had been shared in a group chat, They laughed nervously, admitting they had not expected it to be that good. She thanked them quietly. Throughout the day, small comments followed her. Compliments mixed with surprise, praise that still carried disbelief beneath it. She did not know how to respond, so she kept her answers short. Part of her wanted to disappear again. Another part stood a little straighter. During lunch, she sat alone as usual, but the loneliness felt different now. It was no longer empty. It was full of thoughts. She replayed the moment when the room had gone still. She remembered the silence more than the applause. That silence had changed something. After work, she went home and sat in her room, surrounded by the same walls that had witnessed all her doubts. She picked up her instrument and played without thinking. The sound came easily, as if a door had been opened. She recorded a short clip and stopped herself from deleting it. Instead, she saved it. Days passed, and the quiet attention continued. Someone asked if she had more songs. Another asked if she would perform again. None of it felt overwhelming, but it was unfamiliar. She struggled with a new kind of fear before. Her fear had been about being seen and laughed at. Now, it was about being seen and expected late one night. She sat on the floor, surrounded by old notebooks filled with lyrics. She realized how much she had been hiding, even from herself. She had always treated her music like something fragile, something that needed protection. Now she wondered if she had been protecting herself instead. She thought about the people who had doubted her. Some of them reached out, suddenly supportive, suddenly proud. Their words felt confusing. She was not angry, but she was not comforted either. It made her think about how quickly opinions changed. One evening, she received an email from the event organizer. They asked if she would be interested in performing again at a slightly larger gathering. Nothing big, just more people. She stared at the screen for a long time. Her first instinct was to say no. She imagined standing on another stage, the pressure heavier this time. She imagined people expecting the same feeling, the same reaction. What if she could not deliver it again? She closed her laptop and sat in silence. Her phone buzzed again. A message from someone who had attended the event. They wrote that her song had stayed with them all week, that it had helped them feel less alone. She felt a lump form in her throat. That was never something she had planned for. She had only wanted to express herself. She had not expected her words to reach someone else. She opened the laptop again and replied yes. Preparing for the next performance felt different. She was not practicing to prove anything. She was practicing to be honest again. She chose a new song, one that felt closer to who she was becoming. It was softer, but stronger in its own way. As the day approached, her nerves returned, but they were quieter this time. They did not control her. She knew what fear felt like now, and she knew she could stand through it. The second event was held in a larger room. More chairs. More noise. More unfamiliar faces. She noticed people whispering when she arrived. Some recognized her from the first performance. Others looked curious, trying to understand why she mattered. She waited backstage, listening to the muffled sound of voices. Her heart beat fast, but her hands were steady. When it was her turn, she stepped forward. This time, she did not close her eyes right away. She looked at the audience. She saw anticipation, expectation, skepticism. She took a breath, began. The song flowed differently from the first one. It was not about being invisible. It was about choosing to be seen even when it was uncomfortable. About standing in your truth without apology. As she sang, she noticed people reacting in real time. Some nodded softly. Others leaned back, absorbing the words. The room did not fall completely silent this time, but it felt connected. When she finished, the applause came faster. She smiled. Just a little. Afterward, more messages arrived. More offers. Small ones, but real. Someone asked if she would record a longer piece. Another asked if she had ever thought about sharing her music online. The idea scared her. Sharing online meant losing control. It meant strangers, opinions, harsh words. She had spent so long protecting herself from judgment, but she also remembered how much it had hurt to stay hidden. One night, after hours of thinking, she posted a short recording. No big announcement. No explanation. Just the music. She turned off her phone and went to sleep. When she woke up, the response surprised her. People shared it, commented on it. Some wrote long messages about how it made them feel. Others simply listened quietly. There were negative comments too. Doubt. Dismissive words. They stung, but not the way they once would have. She realized something important. The people who doubted her no longer defined her. Weeks later, her life was still simple. She still worked the same job. She still lived in the same room. But she was no longer the same person. She spoke up more. She laughed louder. She allowed herself to take up space. People around her noticed the change before they understood it. One afternoon, someone who had once laughed at her pulled her aside. They apologized quietly, admitting they had been wrong. She listened and nodded. Forgiveness came easily. But forgetting did not. And she realized she did not need to forget. Those moments had shaped her as she sat in her room that night, music playing softly around her. She understood something clearly. Her journey was not about proving people wrong. It was about finally believing herself. And this was only the beginning. Life did not suddenly become easy after that. In many ways, it became more complicated. The more people noticed her, the more she had to face parts of herself she had avoided for years. She continued sharing her music in small ways. Short recordings, quiet performances, nothing flashy. Each time she pressed upload or stepped onto a stage, her heart still raced. Courage did not erase fear. It simply learned how to walk beside it. People's reactions kept changing. Some became openly supportive, cheering her on as if they had believed in her all along. Others stayed distant, unsure how to treat her now. A few avoided the topic entirely, as if ignoring it might return things to how they used to be. She noticed the difference. The silence from certain people spoke louder than any apology. At work, she was invited into conversations she had never been part of before. People asked her opinions. They listened when she spoke. The shift was subtle but clear. She wondered how many times she had been overlooked, simply because no one expected anything from her, late at night. When the world slowed down, doubt still found its way in. She questioned whether this attention would last, whether she deserved it, whether she was strong enough to keep going. On those nights, she returned to the same place she always had. The music. She wrote more honestly than ever before. About change. About fear. About the strange feeling of being seen after years of being invisible. Her songs did not try to impress. They tried to understand. Slowly, her audience grew. Not thousands. Not millions. Just enough to matter. People reached out from places she had never been, telling her how her words had reached them at the right moment. Some shared stories they had never told anyone else. Others simply said thank you. Each message reminded her that music was not about attention, it was about connection. One afternoon, she received an invitation that made her sit down. A small organization was hosting an event focused on real stories and real voices. They wanted her to perform one original piece. She read the message several times. This was not a casual gathering. The audience would be larger, more focused, more critical. Her first reaction was fear. Her second reaction was honesty. She knew she was not ready in the way people imagined readiness. But she also knew she would never feel ready if she kept waiting. She accepted. Preparation took over her life for weeks. She practiced until her voice felt tired, then rested and practiced again. She paid attention to every word, every pause. She wanted the song to feel true, not perfect. As the day approached, old memories surfaced. Moments of being laughed at. Times she had stayed quiet to avoid judgment. The past tried to remind her who she used to be. She listened and kept going. The venue was bigger than anything she had stood in before. The lights were brighter. The sound felt louder. Backstage, she stood alone, breathing slowly. Grounding herself, she thought about the person she had been when this all started. the one who practiced quietly, afraid of being heard, the one who believed her dream had to stay hidden. That person was still part of her. She carried them with her onto the stage. The audience settled as she stepped forward. She did not rush. She took her time. She looked out and saw faces filled with curiosity, hope, and doubt. She began to sing. The song was simple, but heavy with meaning. It spoke about finding your voice after years of silence, about choosing yourself even when it feels selfish, about letting go of who the world tells you to be. The room responded differently than before. There was no shock this time. No surprise, there was understanding. People listened deeply. Some closed their eyes. Others held still, afraid to break the moment. When she finished, the applause came slowly, then grew stronger. It felt respectful, earned. She stepped off the stage feeling something new. Peace. After the event, she did not rush home. She stayed, speaking with people who approached her. They thanked her. They shared how her song reflected parts of their own lives. She listened more than she spoke. On her way back that night, she realized something important. She was no longer chasing approval. She was sharing truth. As weeks passed, her confidence settled into something steady. Not loud, not showy, just real. She stopped questioning every step she took. She trusted herself more. The jokes from the past no longer echoed as loudly in her mind. When she remembered them, they felt distant, almost small. She noticed how people now spoke about her music with care, with respect. Even those who once laughed chose their words carefully. The change was not about proving them wrong. It was about changing the story. One evening, she visited a place she had avoided for a long time. A small room where she had once tried to share her music and been dismissed. Walking in now felt strange. She did not announce herself. She simply listened. When someone recognized her and asked if she would sing, she paused. The old fear tried to surface. Then she nodded. She sang without pressure, without expectation. Just for the moment, the room responded warmly as she left. She felt a sense of closure she had not known she needed. Her journey was not perfect. There were still setbacks. Still days when her voice felt unsure. Still moments when criticism hurt. But she no longer doubted her place. She had earned it through honesty, persistence, and quiet courage. People often asked when they realized she was serious about music. She never had a simple answer for her. It had never been a joke. The world had just taken time to catch up. And now, as she continued forward, she understood something deeply. The silence that once dismissed her transformed into something else entirely. It had turned into awe, and she was ready for whatever came next. Time passed. Not in dramatic leaps, but in steady steps. Her life did not turn into something unrecognizable. It simply became fuller, more honest, more aligned with who she had always been. She kept working her regular job. She still took the same routes through the city, still lived in the same place. From the outside, not much seemed different. But inside, everything had shifted. Music was no longer something she hid. It was something she carried openly. She continued performing when opportunities came, choosing carefully. She learned to say no when something did not feel right. That was new for her. For most of her life, she had accepted whatever space was offered, afraid to ask for more. Now, she understood that her voice mattered on and off the stage. People began to recognize her beyond a single moment. They followed her work. They listened more than once. Some waited quietly for her next song, not because it was popular, because it felt real. That meant more to her than any loud praise ever could. One afternoon, she received a message from someone young. The message was short but heavy with meaning. It said they had been afraid to share their own creative work until they heard her song, that they finally felt brave enough to try. She sat still for a long time after reading it. She realized then that her journey was no longer just about her. She never set out to inspire anyone. She only wanted to stop hiding. But by choosing honesty over fear, she had quietly given others permission to do the same. That realization humbled her. There were still hard days. Days when her voice felt tired. Days when a performance did not land the way she hoped. Days when criticism crept under her skin and stayed longer than it should have. But she had learned how to handle those moments. Instead of shrinking, she reflected. Instead of quitting, she rested. Instead of doubting her worth, she returned to her reasons. She understood now that growth was not a straight line. It was a rhythm. Some people from her past continued to surprise her. A few who once laughed now asked for advice. Others admitted they had misjudged her because she had never spoken up before. She listened. But she did not let those moments define her. Their change of heart did not erase the past, and it did not need to. What mattered was that she no longer measured herself by their opinions. One evening, she was invited to speak briefly before performing at a small event. The organizer asked her to share a few words about her journey. She stood on the stage, looking out at the audience, and felt a familiar calm. She did not tell a dramatic story. She did not exaggerate her struggles. She simply told the truth. She spoke about being underestimated, about being laughed at without cruelty, but with carelessness, about how silence can shape a person if they let it. She spoke about choosing to keep going anyway. When she finished speaking and began to sing, the room listened in a way that felt different from before. Not curious. Not surprised, respectful afterward. Someone asked her what success meant to her now. She thought carefully before answering. She said, "Success was waking up without regret." It was knowing she no longer abandoned herself to make others comfortable. It was being able to stand in any room and feel whole. That answer stayed with her as the months went by. Her music continued to reach people quietly. No sudden fame. No overnight transformation. Just steady connection. She learned to celebrate small milestones. Finishing a song she was proud of, receiving a message that said her music helped someone through a hard night, standing on a stage without fear controlling her. Those moments added up. One day, she returned to the place where she had once been laughed at the most. Not to prove anything, just to observe. She sat quietly listening to conversations around her. She noticed how often people joked about dreams they did not understand, how easily potential was dismissed when it did not fit expectations. She smiled softly. She understood now that doubt often says more about the person doubting than the one being doubted. When someone recognized her and mentioned her music, the reaction around her was different, curious, impressed, open. She did not feel proud. She felt free later that night. Alone in her room, she played music softly. The same space where everything had started. The same walls. The same quiet, but the silence no longer felt heavy. It felt supportive. She thought about the version of herself who used to stop mid-song, afraid someone might hear. She wished she could go back and sit beside her, tell her to keep going. But she realized she did not need to. She had already done that by becoming who she was now. Her story was not one of sudden success. It was a story of quiet persistence, of choosing self-belief when no one else offered it, of turning dismissal into motivation without becoming bitter. People still sometimes said they never expected her music to be so powerful. She no longer flinched when she heard that. She understood it as a reflection of how often the world underestimates quiet people. The truth was simple. Her music had always been there. People had just not been listening as she continued forward. She stopped worrying about who believed in her first or who doubted her longest. Those details faded in importance. What remained was the work, the connection, the honesty. And whenever she stood on a stage, no matter how big or small, she carried the same intention: to be real, to be present, to sing the truth as she knew it. They once thought it was a joke now. When she played, the room listened. Not because she demanded attention, but because she had earned it. And in that quiet, breathless space between the first note and the last, she finally felt at home, after everything she had been through. She thought she understood what confidence felt like. But life had a way of teaching lessons in layers. Just when she felt settled, a new chapter began to unfold. Quieter on the surface, but deeper than anything before. Her music had found a steady place in her life. Not as a miracle, not as a rescue, but as a companion. She no longer waited for permission to create. She wrote when something moved her. She rested when she needed to. There was balance where chaos once lived, yet with that balance came a new question she had avoided asking. What came next? For a long time, survival had been her focus, proving to herself that she could keep going, that she could be seen without breaking. Now that she had reached a place of calm, she realized growth did not stop there. One evening, organizing old recordings on her phone, she came across her earliest files. The sound quality was poor, her voice shaky, the lyrics unpolished. She listened anyway. Instead of embarrassment, she felt tenderness. That person had been brave in ways she had not understood back then. Brave enough to try without support. Brave enough to hope quietly. She realized something important in that moment. She did not want to leave that version of herself behind. Around the same time, people began reaching out with a different kind of request. Not for performances, not for recordings, but for guidance. They asked how she found the courage to start, how she handled doubt, how she kept going when no one believed in her. At first she felt unqualified to answer. She was not an expert. She had no special training, no clear formula. All she had was her experience, so she began responding honestly. She told them she was scared most of the time. That confidence came after action, not before. That waiting to feel ready often meant waiting forever. Her words resonated, more than she expected. She noticed that people were not looking for perfection. They were looking for permission. One weekend, she was invited to sit in on a small, creative workshop. Nothing formal. Just a circle of people sharing ideas and unfinished work. She hesitated before going, unsure if she belonged in a space like that. But when she arrived, she felt something familiar. The room was filled with people who reminded her of herself. Quiet dreamers, nervous creators, individuals holding something fragile inside them. When it was her turn to speak, she did not perform. She listened. She listened to stories of fear and hesitation, of being laughed at, of being told to choose something safer. She saw herself in every face. When she finally shared, she spoke simply about how music had saved her from disappearing into other people's expectations, about how silence can become heavy if you carry it too long. The room was still. Not impressed, understood. That night, she walked home feeling something she had not felt before. Purpose. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind that settles in your chest and stays. She began volunteering her time in small ways. Offering feedback. Encouraging others to share their work. Sitting in the audience when new voices took the stage. She knew how much that presence mattered. In doing this, she noticed another shift. Her relationship with her own. Music changed again. It became less about expression and more about service. Not in a draining way, but in a grounding one. She chose words more carefully. She paid attention to the impact of her honesty. She understood now that art could hold space for others, not just herself. There were moments when she questioned if she was giving too much. When exhaustion crept in and doubt whispered that she was losing focus, on those days, she stepped back. She reminded herself that rest was not failure, that boundaries were part of growth. One quiet morning, she received a message from someone who had attended one of the workshops. They wrote that they had finally shared their music publicly, that it had been terrifying, that it had also been freeing. She smiled as she read it. She knew that feeling well. Her journey had come full circle in a way she had not expected. She was no longer just the one being heard. She was helping others believe they could be heard too. As months went by, her life settled into a rhythm that felt right. She performed occasionally. She taught informally. She created without pressure. The noise of expectations faded. What remained was clarity. She no longer chased moments that looked impressive from the outside. She chose moments that felt meaningful on the inside. Sometimes people still approached her with surprise, saying they never imagined she would come this far. She smiled politely. She had stopped measuring distance that way. Far was not a place, it was a decision. One evening, after a small performance, she sat alone in the empty room. The chairs were stacked, the lights dimmed. The echoes of her last song still lingered faintly. She felt content, not because of applause, not because of recognition, but because she knew she had stayed true. She thought about how easily her story could have ended before it truly began. How many times she had almost chosen silence over self-trust. She felt grateful she had not. Her life was still ordinary in many ways. Bills still came. Stress still appeared. Doubt still visited from time to time, but it no longer stayed. She had learned how to greet it, acknowledge it, and let it pass. As she locked the door and stepped into the cool night air, she felt grounded in a way that did not need explanation. Her story was not finished. It never would be. But she was no longer afraid of where it might lead. She had learned to walk forward without rushing, to trust quiet progress, to believe that being underestimated was not a weakness, it was a beginning. And wherever her music carried her next, she knew one thing for certain. She would keep listening to herself. Because that, more than anything, was what had changed everything. But inside her, something had shifted. She was terrified. She was unsure. But for the first time, she had taken a step that could not be undone. They still thought her music was a joke. She was about to find out who was wrong.